The so-called White Widow is a British national. Her husband died in a London suicide bombing. Does the UK have any new information about her? Let's discuss this and more with Britain's Deputy Prime Minister, Nick Clegg, who's joining us right now. Minister, thanks very much for coming in. Do you have any idea about her whereabouts right now?
No, of course we don't. Absolutely none. And, it is for Interpol to explain the alert that it has issued. I have no evidence linking her to the events in Nairobi. That is all still something that needs to be investigated. But clearly, she is someone of interest to Interpol, and I think it's important that we allow Interpol to get on with the work.
Have British authorities specifically been on the lookout for her? Is she wanted in Britain?
Well, she's obviously someone who's well known to the authorities in the UK and elsewhere. But as I say, at the moment, she's now this alert has been put out by Interpol. It's not been specifically linked to the events in Nairobi. She has some of the history that your earlier piece described. But the key thing now is to let Interpol get on with its work.
We'll see if they can find her, if she's still alive, or where she is. Let's talk a little bit about Syria. You may have heard the breaking news this hour. It looks like there's a resolution now going to be on the table at the UN Security Council, worked out by the U.S. and Russia. I assume if that's true, Britain, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, is on board dealing with chemical weapons and their eventual destruction in Syria. What can you tell us about this?
Well, I think we're close to getting a UN resolution on this. We've certainly been very, very supportive as one of the permanent members of the UN Security Council of translating the American-Russian agreement into something which is binding in the United Nations. Exactly when and in what form that will take, I think we've got a few more steps to go through. But the intention is very clear: is to make sure that this agreement now has some teeth, is internationally recognized, and that if the Assad regime seeks in any way to escape from its commitments under that agreement, that there will be consequences.
When you say consequences, including the U.S., the use of force, or whether by the U.S. or others, would those be acceptable consequences?
Well, my own view is that I don't think we would have got to this point in the first place if there hadn't been a credible threat of deterrent force on the table. And clearly, I very much hope this won't happen. I very much hope that the agreement and the commitments that are entered into by the Assad regime will be followed so that we can take chemical weapons out of the equation altogether. These are heinous, illegal weapons which have been prohibited to close for 90 years. But if that were not to occur, I do think that the international community, and obviously the United States and the President of the United States has been clear about this, should retain the right to be able to take action to deter to stop the temptation for any further use of these horrible weapons.
A lot of us were stunned when the Parliament voted against allowing Britain to participate, to support the United States in the use of force in Syria. It was a stunning event. I remember anchoring our coverage when that roll call in the Parliament was going on. A lot of members of your own party, the Liberal Democrats, voted against you on this. Why was there such opposition in Britain to aligning itself with President Obama and the U.S.? Because I don't remember a time when the U.S. and the U.K. were on such different pages.
I think there are a number of explanations, but I think what was very obvious to me as I sat through the debate in the House of Commons, I sat pretty well through all 8 hours of the debate. It was obvious to me that MPs from all parties, members of Parliament from all parties, were, to be fair, reflecting a very widespread public anxiety and scepticism about the wisdom of being entangled in a new conflict in the Middle East. And much as myself, the Prime Minister and others sought to explain that all we were trying to establish was a principled consent for participating in any eventual deterrent action led by President Obama, I think the memories of the Iraq conflict 10 years ago were so strong still that I think that really did prompt very profound scepticism on the part of many MPs and reflecting in many ways the views that they were hearing from their own constituents. I've heard from my own constituents in my district, in my constituency in Sheffield, profound public scepticism about all of that. So I understand all of that, I recognise all of that, and I certainly don't begrudge people those views. My view as well known then, which was that the case that President Obama was making at that time, which is that it might be necessary to take military steps to deter the further use of these weapons, because the use of the weapons are an international war crime under international humanitarian law, I felt was a strong case. But it was not, as you know, a case that carried the day in the House of Commons.
One quick question on Iran before I let you go. You believe this new president of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, is the real deal, moderate, and there's a new chapter about to develop between Iran and the West?
Well, there's certainly new language, and the words that he's using, the tone that he is striking, the language which he's deploying, of course, is encouraging, and I welcome that. He appears to be reaching out to the world, but words on their own, of course, do not constitute a solution to the threat and the possibility of a nuclear-armed Iran, which I think would be destabilizing to the region and very destabilizing to the world. So now the thing to do is to see whether those words can be translated into action. But I think the whole international community, Britain, the Europeans, Russia, China, the United States, we've all put a very clear offer on the table to Iran, which is to recognize Iran's entirely legitimate use of civil nuclear capabilities, but to draw the line, if you like, at the development of a military nuclear capability. And I think if we can come to some agreement on that basis, that would be very promising for the future of the world as a whole.
Certainly would be if you could do it peacefully. That would be the best way out of this situation.